I'm so excited for this guest because she has served as a mentor for me early on in my career, and it's just such a full circle moment to be interviewing her today. Coral Reynolds is the president of Fiesta Plush, a division of SRP companies. With 15 years of experience, Fiesta, Coral started in a customer service role and worked her way up to the position of president. We're going to talk about how she did that. She leads a plush company that was founded in 1972, overseeing all aspects of the business with the support of just an amazing team. She is married and has a 19-year-old son. And besides being a girl boss, right, she just does so many and powerful things, right, beyond mentoring young women. Her and her husband also operate a glamping resort in the USVI where she splits some of her time. And we'll be going into that. How do you do this whole thing with work-life balance? So I'm so excited for you guys to take a listen. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited that you're here.
No, thank you so much, Ashley. It's so good to see you again and to catch up. And I'm very excited to be on here. Thank you. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure.
We were just talking about how we don't know the last time that we had connected or talked, but you were and are one of my mentors and really helped me in this space. So I'm excited for other young women to hear from you and your insights.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was hoping I was helping, but at the time, still I'm learning myself. So I think we're always learning and trying to help each other. So it's hard sometimes.
Absolutely. So I want to dive into really your leadership journey. So can you just talk to us about what inspired your journey into leadership? Like how did you get where you are right now?
Um, I think if you talk to any of my family members, they'd say I was always a leader. They like to call it bossy. But I was always a leader from when I was a young girl. And I kind of really got that from my father. He was kind of the person of our family that everybody went to for everything and falling into his footsteps, not only at Fiesta, but kind of taking over different roles in that sense as well. But I love to learn from people. I love to guide people and really just build something together and do it together. So, I mean, leading something, I think it's leading as well as following. And there's a lot of following and a lot of learning while you're going. And I think that that's really what I wanted to do was to be able to help people in both ways and lead them and be able to go on a journey together, essentially.
Absolutely. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about when you had graduated? So, what was your major, and then what did it look like? Because I think people always assume that like they're like, oh, you graduated, and then I became the president of a major
Oh
company.
no, I think too many people think that that's how it works too, coming
Yes.
out that you're going to go to school and I mean, great education, but then you come out and you're like, what am I going to do? But I went to San Diego State. I majored in business management and somehow minored in sociology along the way. But the whole time I was actually going to school, I was also managing restaurants. So I got into the restaurant industry when I was 16 years old and moved up with a company, a family owned company, and ended up opening three restaurants together. And so the whole time while I was going to school, I was managing the restaurant and kind of doing both and graduated. And I love the restaurant industry, but it's a grind and it's tough. And I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life and wanted to somehow use my degree for something, but at that time that I thought was more useful than being a restaurant manager. And went into working at Enterprise Rent a Car for a little bit, did some different managements across the board. And then one day, my father, who was the president of Fiesta at that time, came home and was talking about some challenges he was having at work. And I wasn't liking the spot that I happened to be in at the job that I was at. And it had a very strict, didn't matter how well you were doing, you weren't being promoted unless it was in a timeline. And that just wasn't what I was looking for. I wasn't looking to sign on to a 10-year deal to eventually become a manager. And so I talked to my father and said, okay, let me come in and tell you everything you're going to doing wrong and how I can fix it and then we'll go from there. And everybody in our family thought it was a terrible idea, but 15 years later, we're both still working there together, and somehow it worked out. But I never expected it. Never once did I expect to join the family business. Never once did I expect to go into this journey. I wanted to go into hospitality. And I think the second part of my journey in life is leading a little bit more towards that hospitality. But really fell into it and started off as a sales rep. Started off just in sales, and then slowly as I evolved and the company evolved and we realized I wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, started really getting into the nitty gritty of
What I love about that is that you saw something that was going on and that was going wrong, and you're like, how can I fix that?
it.
Love
I don't know if people like it or they don't, but yes.
I love that because I feel like that's something that we've all sort of seen. We've seen something that just doesn't sit right or doesn't look right. And sometimes people just ignore it. But I love that you said, hey, this is something that I could fix.
Well, and that's, I think a lot of people expect us to ignore it and to move on from it and not think about it. And as my husband likes to tell me, drink my water and mind my business. That's when when I'm getting a little too maybe in somebody else's business. I'm reminded to drink my water, which is one of the best things that I could tell anybody. It's
Yes.
great to have that little key word with somebody that you trust, and you know what, I might have just gotten into someplace I shouldn't. But I think that we do sit back when things can be done a lot. And you don't think you can change things or one person can do it, but that's we all have that same mentality. Of course, nothing's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now tell us about the toy industry. I'm so excited about this. What's exciting about the space, and maybe for those that don't know a lot about it, is there anything that we should know as we're, having this discussion?
The toy industry it's one of the most competitive industries I've ever seen. It's and once you're in it, you're in it. If you're A lot of people switch from company to company and move up or to go on different sides, the buying, the licensing. But it's most people don't think about toys and stuffed animals and how they're made or where they're coming from. Every time I tell somebody I'm the president of a toy company, they kind of laugh at me and like they're like, "Oh, that's cute," and you're like, "Hmm, yeah, that is every single person in America has a stuffed animal. Every single person in the world right now has a stuffed animal somewhere near them, or they have a connection to something, or they have that toy." And I think that's one of the, I think, most rewarding things about the industry is that it resonates with everybody. But the toy industry is ever evolving. We're coming up with new ideas. We're coming up with more sustainable ideas, making sure that we're creating something. It's going to essentially a child. And it is a lasting memory that stays with them for so long. And so I think it's just a very dynamic in what goes into it as far as the licensors that do it, the creators, the designers, the importing. There's so many different things. And it's always kind of looked at as, I would say, like nobody looks at it. It's not even looking at it. Nobody thinks about it. And when you're in it, it's a grind harder than I think a lot of people would ever imagine from a soft little teddy bear. And the challenges you face are those that the rest of the world is still facing, but you think of it in a softer view, whether it be teddy bears or toys. I think it's just a different industry, and you have to be fast fashion with it. That's one thing that we say at Fiesta is we are a fast fashion toy company. We have to come up with the new and the best and the greatest all the time, but being sustainable and making sure we're still relevant and coming up with things that kids want to see. It used to be a very cut and dry industry, blocks, toys, teddy bear, easy. Kids are smarter now. They want to play with things. They want different animals. Our top selling animal is an axolotl right now. Bats are doing huge for us, but a teddy bear is probably our least selling amount. And that's, if you look at it, it's keeping up with the kids and those trends and what do they want to see.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that makes me think about too, any sort of challenges that you've faced in your role, because you've talked a lot about adapting and pivoting, their sustainability, right? It's such a highly competitive space. um what are some of the challenges that you faced, and I'm curious about how you've turned those into either opportunities or just how you've responded to them, because that's a really scary thing for a lot of leaders. It's that, you're like, oh, I'm the president or I'm a CEO of a company. Oh, it's great, but you're facing a lot of challenges on the daily.
Oh, I've talked about this actually with my father a lot, because the company that I run and the company that he's ran is completely different, and the dynamics are completely different. And the what I deal with today, he would have never thought to deal with. I took over presidency at 32 years old, and during that time, we also decided to sell our family-owned business to a private equity firm. And we chose a private equity firm that was very aligned with our values and the way that we treat employees. And we're not just a number on a book. And we really wanted to partner with somebody that could help us grow. And they really have helped us grow. And so coming into it, I mean, first, the father daughter dynamic and trying to change somebody is unbelievable. But the growth that we saw and what we were able to do and take the company from when my dad was there and then growing it to be able to sell to a private equity firm and to be able to show that value was incredible. Going into private equity, if you haven't gone through it, it is one of the most challenging things ever. We changed over our whole ERP system. We stopped shipping for almost a month. We didn't invoice for 3 months, and we couldn't figure out how. Going into that, we went into the first round of possible tariffs ever on stuffed animals, which was unheard of. We couldn't print catalogs because we didn't know what to print pricing wise. And we couldn't give customers answers, what their price was going to be tomorrow. We didn't know what tariffs were going to be. Coming into an industry that's never seen it before, it was terrifying. It probably took us a solid 6 months to kind of get our footing, and then lo and behold, no tariffs on Plush. So that was awesome. But then right from there, we go into COVID and running a business remote with your main customer base is destination locations, zoos, aquariums, museums, amusement parks, everything that you are not allowed to go to during COVID. So looking for different ways to pivot through that. I mean, we were all going through such a rough time during that and all trying to learn together. And my family business, if it wasn't for private equity and it wasn't for the backing of them, we would have not just furloughed everybody, but we probably would have had to have gotten rid of most people. But having that private equity backing helped us. We were able to furlough everyone, get our company back up and running. Myself and my VP worked at our houses 12 hours a day, communicated everything through it. We ran all phone calls. We had two people shipping any product we could. We launched a business to consumer website during that time to try and generate revenue, but also to bring stuffed animals to kids still. Then from there, going back into being the busiest we've ever been. Everybody was free and we were allowed out and we could do things, and people wanted to and spend money at amusement parks and museums and zoos and aquariums, go to Great Wolf Lodge, do the things that you wanted to do as a family and go through the biggest boom that we've seen as an industry. We've always kind of said we're recession proof because everybody needs stuffed animals. You still need that comfort. But to come out of COVID and it getting very scary as far as what's going to happen next, to go into something that nobody was prepared for, the boom and the economy that came with that was unbelievable for us. And now, fast forward 4 years later, we said it earlier, I can't believe we're going into 5 years. And just going through different dynamics still with private equity, changing CEOs multiple times. And now we're facing another possible tariff and saying, didn't we just go through this? And so when's the break? When do we stop? But really making sure that we're working together. My team's been huge. We've stayed together. We've grown together. We've been able to develop our employees more, really getting involved with our customers, figuring out what the end consumer needs. trying to go through it as much as we can, and then also looking for other ways to produce stuffed animals, whether it be in different countries, um, looking for different innovations that we can make sure we can continue with. There's always going to be challenges. And I think that my team has done an amazing job of turning those challenges into double digit growth every year. It's been phenomenal to see. I'm happy to be a part of it.
I love it. I think my favorite line is like, didn't we just go through that? Like, I feel like that's such a thing of a hold on.
It is. Again, again. And
Yes.
before this, the industry was just so quiet. The world was quiet. And so I think, and dealing with an evolving workforce that works differently. Um, we said it at the beginning of the call, work-life balance.
Hmm.
How do I give my employees that? How do I give myself that without running everybody ragged and still being able to run a successful business? I'd love to give everybody 3, 4 days off a week, but that's not feasible for a business to run that way. So how do we make sure that we can? What do people value?
Absolutely. No, we talked about the mentorship relationships earlier, and that's how we had met. But I'm really curious, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this question about your own mentors. Who have been your biggest mentors and how they supported you or helped shape your growth and leadership?
I read this question too because you gave me some questions to look at and some ideas, and I was thinking about it. And my first knee-jerk reaction is my father. We're very similar people, so I think it was easy for me to learn from him because I understood him. He's taught me so much, and I mean, has really helped me grow within this industry. Has challenged me as well, and has made me think about things different. Um, I think my husband, though, has shaped the way that I lead more than anybody else. When I first started leading, I was new to it. I didn't know. I didn't necessarily listen as much as I should. I spoke before I should, and I would fly off the handle, which happened to be one of my father's attributes as well. And I always told myself I didn't want to do that. He's amazing and everybody loves him, but I didn't want to be that leader in the same way. That wasn't my style. And so my husband's really helped me to grow in the way that I've led. My mother-in-law was, or well, she was in banking since she was 14 and moved up in Bank of America, and now is running her family's her and her husband opened up a bakery, and to see such a strong, powerful woman in such a man-driven world, um, and just a tough world, being on the trading floor. And so to be able to reach out to her as well and get some like solid business advice that my dad can't offer me from a woman's aspect. This is what she went through, and this is her approach on things. I still, though, it's my husband still bridges that gap for me on knowing who I am and knowing who his mother is, and our approaches need to be different. And so I truly believe, yeah, it's my husband that's guided me through this and helped me, not guided me, but really held my hand and helped me become a better leader. Help me think about things more, help me sit down and really go over it and contemplate things. And if I was in my employee's shoes, how would I do this? How can I be better every day?
Oh, I love that. I love that. And having such a supportive partner, I feel like is so key. And I don't know if we talk about that enough. Having somebody in your life that's like gonna help you through those times and just have a sounding board. Like
Yep.
it's so important. Um,
There's sometimes where I'll tell them I don't want feedback. I
yes.
get enough feedback. I get enough mansplaining. I need you to
Yes.
just listen to me for a second. And
Yes.
then there's other times where I come in and I say, okay, I'm going to tell you my story. I'd like some constructive feedback. I don't need you to mansplain it. I want to know how you would handle it. Because, I mean, you're still dealing with a lot of different men throughout. And
Oh,
I don't always need to be told how I'm doing it or how you would do it. That's not necessarily why I bring things to you. I do just need a sounding board. And then there are times that you do want that advice.
Exactly, exactly. And it's so true. I feel like, a part of a lot of conversations, we always need to say, okay, no mansplaining,
Yep.
but other types of people, because like I feel like a lot of conversations I still have, even if it's something as simple as I'm in a grocery store and I ask for help with something, the person that works there's mansplaining.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
I just, and everybody thinks that they want to know how they would do it. I don't care how you would do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh, so true. And this, I feel like this kind of goes into the next question because we know that being in the role that you're in, it's demanding, right? It's fast paced. You have to balance, creativity with a lot of these operational things. I'm curious about how you maintain that balance. And it could be the work-life balance, but also just a balance of, you know, mansplaining that you receive throughout the day and remaining positive, right? Or your own leadership. So what does that look like for you?
Oh, so with when we talk about the work-life balance, after COVID, my husband and I decided we needed something a little bit different and we needed to change. We had just spent a year together, more than a year, with me and my son and my husband all locked into one little tiny house. But at the end of it, I didn't hate any of them. And I actually wanted to spend more time with them. And what I realized was up until COVID, I would go into the office. I would leave my house every day between 5:30 and 6 a.m. I would drive 42 miles to East LA. I would sit there and usually leave at about 7 o'clock at night because that's when traffic died down. I'd get home, eat dinner, usually still answer emails. We'd watch maybe a show, go to bed, do it all over again. Was traveling 51% of the year for trade shows and visiting customers. And I got to the point where I realized finally that I wasn't living my life. I was living for work and I was not seeing my son grow up. I made it to as many games as I could. Homework I wasn't good at, so my husband needed to take that no matter what. But I wasn't there for them, and they were living a life that I wasn't a part of, and I realized that during COVID, and that it COVID did a lot for my family, and I realized who I wanted to be. And coming back from it, I didn't want to answer emails at 5 o'clock at night. I wanted to have an off. I didn't want to answer phone calls at 6 a.m. I wanted to have times. And while you're still leading a company and you still have to be an example, and all growth is still depending on you and your team and you putting in that additional work, I I realize that no matter what, still at the end of the day, it is a job. And while it still is a job that is very important to me, and I love what I do and I love my team, it's still at the end of the day, it's a job, and we only have one go around at this place. And I wanted to start having fun. So my husband and I, we took a trip, and one thing led to another, and we now own a glamp ground in the Virgin Islands. And so we're off of a small island in St. Thomas, and I happen to be here right now. But we ended up, and we've looked at a lot of different places, and he never would have thought that he could get me to move to the Virgin Islands, and neither did I. And if you ask anybody in my family, they don't know how he coerced me into doing this. But in reality, I stood right out my window on the beach and had a cocktail. And for the first time in what felt like the company selling, going through tariffs, COVID, everything, I took a breath. I could breathe. And it gives me goosebumps because I remember that feeling so well. And I looked at my husband and I said, let's do this. And I'm surprised he didn't have a heart attack right then and there. And he was like, are you serious? And I said, yeah, we're going to do this. And if it fails, it fails. But if we don't do it now, we are never going to do it. And if I don't jump now, I'm never going to jump. And It's been a rough 3 years. My husband lives here permanently, and I go back and forth between here and California and everywhere I travel to. And I still travel way more, and I live out of a suitcase. But this, as far as work-life balance, just figuring out what you want and who you want to be helps. When I come down here, I am so productive at Fiesta. I have an office here. I'm sitting in front of 3 screens right now. I work still on California time, but then there are some times where at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll go take a dip in the ocean and then continue my day. But this has helped me with like the demand, the fast pace, that work-life balance. I haven't given up work. I work harder than I ever have because now I have 2 businesses to manage. And I somehow have to come up with social media for the campground as well. But I think to the first part, without the mansplaining, this has been, I think, finding that. It's not necessarily a work-life balance. It's finding what you want to do and where you want to be. Um, and I think that was a little tangent for me, but yes, work-life balance and mansplaining. Mansplaining, I try and explain it to my father still to this day. Um, and like I just said, I'm not asking for how you would do it. I'm having a conversation with you and you're telling me how you would do it. I don't, I'm very confident in what I'm doing. The business has grown significantly since you were here and has changed. And I think it's being honest with the men in our lives that like to mansplain because everywhere I go, I'm being told this is how I would do it. This is my opinion. This is this. And there's times where you just take it because it's just easier and it's sure, give me your advice. But then there's times where I definitely fight back on it and say, no, my husband knows. No, I don't. This is what I need. And so I've learned to tell people that too and tell men that I'm I'm not asking for how you would do anything. I am having a conversation with you. When women have a conversation, we typically don't say how we would do it. I curled my hair this morning. Well, this is how I would have curled my hair this morning. We're having a conversation. And I think that so many times it's taken into we're helpless and we're asking for help. And that's why we're communicating it instead of looking at it like your buddy is drinking a beer on the golf course. Like you don't tell them how to do it. Why tell me? And so I've tried to really, especially the men in my life that I'm close to or that I deal with regularly, try and explain that. Trying not to come off as a hysterical woman. Um, Fighting for yourself now puts you in a state of hysteria. And I've actually dealt with it very recently and walking away and going with who I'm working with who I'm looking at. That's how I'm treated for standing up for myself. But I won't back down from it. And it's really just call me hysterical, mansplain it to me. I'm in my position for a reason and I'm doing pretty good and I'm thriving. And so if you want to explain it to me because it makes you feel better, so be it.
Oh, I love that. That's the best explanation too of mansplaining because sometimes I feel like it can be hard to explain to people that just don't get it or want to get it. But I love your comparison to just drinking beer. You're not going
Yeah.
to explain how you're going to drink it. It's just a normal
I,
dialogue.
yeah. I mean, I'm opening a bottle of wine. Yes, it's not the same way you'd open it. Get over it.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't need to tell me. Keep it inside.
Exactly, exactly. It's so fascinating to me. I feel like maybe that could be the next big topic that we could have, or like a podcast or something, just explaining the mansplaining
Yeah.
and how not to do
We
it.
yeah, we don't need it, guys.
Don't we need it? We don't need it. It's
We
it's
don't.
it's
If we get hurt, we're gonna be okay. We'll
yes.
figure it out. Like
Figure
we're
it out.
better at overcoming things. Come on.
Ex-
We're resilient. We got this.
We got this. It's so true. It's so true. And speaking of resiliency, um, and I don't know if I shared this question with you beforehand, but I love to end on this question because it's so unique and it challenges people sometimes. But as you know, chess being a huge part of everything that I do, and we always talk about the queen being the most powerful piece. And what I love to tell people is you need to unleash your inner queen, whatever that means for you. So I'm curious in your world, in your life, what does unleashing your inner queen mean for you and maybe how do you unleash it?
It, I love it too. I've listened to it and I love it. And I don't know if you have them yet, but you need stickers.
Yes.
Um, we need some kind of swag to go with it.
Yes.
But I think it's being comfortable with me, and really allowing myself to empower myself. It's taken me a while to get there
Mhm.
in everything, in body image, leadership image. My husband always said I had imposter syndrome. I'd never believed that I was doing anything good enough, or that I could be in my position, or that I could be growing, or I something I was lucky. I've I've always looked, I think, for the outside to validate me because that's what we were taught. And I think for me, it's really empowering myself, and being comfortable with who I am every day. And I work on it every day. I try to really focus on what makes me happy. And if that doesn't necessarily align with my husband that day or whoever I'm with, what am I need to do to find peace today? And I used to think it was exercising, even though I never wanted to exercise. So I just don't do that now because that's not what I want to do. A lot of the times it's watching my Bravo shows and just relaxing and watching just junk TV that isn't a guilty pleasure. It's just a pleasure. There's no guilt there. I love it. But I think it's looking at it and just being able to be okay with myself at the end of the day, having a glass of wine, having my dinner, and watching a show by myself, um, not needing anybody. My husband and I go weeks, months sometimes without seeing each other now because of where we're located. And in the beginning, that was really hard. And I realized that I can't let that be who I am. I can't let him define me or our relationship define me. And so now I go out pretty regularly and I find friends and I get to know people more. And it's just bringing myself back down to enjoying life. And I think that's what it comes down to for me is enjoying life. I hadn't enjoyed it in a long time. I lived it. And now I will enjoy it. And if that means having a cocktail a little bit early on a Wednesday, I may do that.
Oh, absolutely. Are we watching Love is Blind on
Oh,
the
I love them all.
I love them all too. It's and you know what? I found them relaxing. I really do.
I do. I laugh. I have fun, and then I look at them and go, "My life's not as miserable as some
Yes.
people's, and I'm not miserably failing. I did not throw a chair across the room today."
Exactly. Exactly. And you knew your husband was going to say yes at the altar.
Yes,
Yes.
I know.
It's so funny to me.
I mean, it was hit and miss. He was a little tipsy, so it was a little hit and miss. But yes, there's
Oh,
just so many that but I love them. I do. And I hate that people used to call them guilty pleasures because they're just pleasures.
they really
There's
are.
no guilt.
There's no guilt. I will watch it loud and proud.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for, taking the time to share your insight and just for everything that you do and empowering and inspiring so many young women as well, to
No, thank you.
do their goals and everything. It's just been so great to, reconnect with you, and I want to thank you for everything that you do.
No, I appreciate it. And I love that you're doing this. I love to see the journey and I appreciate you letting me be a part of it. When you asked me to, I didn't know what I would say or what I had to offer. But we all have something to offer. We just don't know about yet.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.